Speaking of hot messes, the Vancouver Canucks, they've done it. They've actually done it. Jim Benning is gone, along with some assistant stuff, and Travis Green is gone. Now, what's funny is before all of these announcements were official, is Elliot Friedman tweeted that it seemed that Bruce Boudreau would be the next coach of the Vancouver Canucks. That was before all the firings. The exact firings I'll read you to you now. Jim Benning, the GM, assistant GM John Weisbrod, I'm definitely saying that wrong, head coach Travis Green, and assistant coach Nolan Baumgartner. Now, what's really funny as a part of this is Bruce Boudreau is not coming alone. Scott Walker's coming with him, so the emergency Team Canada Spangler Cup coaching staff has just been slashed, and it's just poor Claude Julien by himself. It's weird. I thought I would be coming up here, and I'd be so excited to talk about Jim Benning, and I do have some snippets of Jim's career I'd like to read to you guys. But it was just, maybe it's because I didn't have any personal tie to the Canucks like I obviously do when Bergevin got fired, and then it was just hallelujah. And we're going to talk about Bergevin in a second, you know we will. But Jim Benning is gone. What are you guys going to remember about Jim Benning's tenure as general manager of the Vancouver Canucks?
His crazy free agent signings, of course.
Crazy is certainly a way of putting it. I think Canucks fans would probably describe it as enraging.
Yeah.
Daniel.
I think for me, it's just going to be the highs and the lows of things where you assume as I'm putting my shoes in a Canucks fan perspective that you are so happy of how things are going on where it comes to drafting here and there. But, for every pick, it's just, listen, Jim, what's going on? Like, I know he redeemed himself with Quinn Hughes and with Elias Pettersson, but you look back on the trajectory of a lot of these things, it's just like, wait, what are you actually doing? Because you're not tanking it when you should have, and you keep adding to this roster. So for me, it's just going to be confusion, I think, about what he was trying to do.
It was, I think a lot about Jim Benning, and first off, I'd like to thank him. He gave me many smiles as a hockey fan. Not as a Canucks fan, but as a hockey fan. The Oliver Ekman-Larsson deal, of course. I hope Dylan Guenther is great for the Coyotes. Until they inevitably trade him because they're rebuilding for the third time. Tyler Myers. Beagle. Louis Eriksson, who I believe just played his 1,000th game.
Against Dallas. Congrats.
It was against Dallas too, eh?
Yeah.
That's
full
really
circle.
Cool. That's really cool. Antoine Roussel, of course, talked about that. Jay Beagle, great stuff. There was so much about his term. I kind of love it.
This was not the biggest thing for me, but it was just when I talk about confusion and not really know what he wanted to do is always going to be when he was drafting like crazy, acquiring all these picks. For example, he traded Ryan Kessler and got a lot of picks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he started trading those picks. He traded one of the picks for Derek Dorsett. And then the pick became Jared McCann. And then he traded Jared McCann for Eric Branson. So I'm like, okay, what are you... you're trading guys that have all this value and you are getting a solid return for them. But what are you going for that? For example, he was able to Jason Garrison. He had a really bad contract with the Canucks and he managed to get a second round pick out of it from the Lightning. And then he traded that second round pick for Lyndon Vay, who could barely make it for the LA Kings.
Jared McCann, by the way, who has 10 goals, 15 points in 20 games played for the Seattle Kraken.
Do you know what it sounds like Jim Benning is doing? It sounds like he's making the decent move and then somehow managing to screw that up.
You kind of know, obviously everyone can throw one ball in the air. Everyone can probably throw two and then catch it with either hand. But when you try and juggle that third ball, it becomes a bit of a mess if you're not very coordinated. That was Jim Benning. He could, say what you want about his trades, maybe not the great, but he had a handling on drafting and developing. All right, fair enough. He had a good staff. He had, it's Ian Clark is the goaltending coach that's done wonders there. He had the guy who went to Minnesota, who am I forgetting?
Judd Brackett
and all this. But then slowly, once you throw in free agency and the money and losing time, he drops the staff. He loses bracket and all that type of stuff. Oh no, I've lost my again. At one time, Brandon Pridham obviously was part of that organization. No longer there, and there goes the cap shenanigans. Oh no, what's going on? And it's so annoying because we've talked so much about the similarities between Benning and Bergevin. Bergevin could never get the star talent, but it was great with complementary players. Jim Benning has the stars, but he clearly just doesn't know how to properly allocate money to a supporting cast and could never build one that was truly effective for the Canucks. Now, that's what I'm always going to remember him for is whoever gets his job is going to walk in and have Demko, Pettersson, Hughes, right now, Horvat for another year, Miller, another year. You can work with that. You know what I mean? That's what's super frustrating. And we'll see. Boudreaux has only done one game. 4-0. It was great, but there's almost a sense of there's a chance with Vancouver and Boudreaux, which is really weird. But whoever comes into that job, there are worse situations to come into.
Sure, you could be Pierre Dorian right now.
Oh, sacre bleu! Ah, yeah, Matt Murray's not great.
Pierre Dorian. I would not want to be him at the moment.
The owner is not great.
Right. I just think with what they're left with is Steve Dangle put it best a few episodes ago on the SDP is that Vancouver has been accidentally bad for so many years. And it's just, I look at this roster and I don't understand necessarily how, especially this year. I look at Elias Pettersson. I look at Brock Besser. I look at Bo Horvat, JT Miller, Connor Garland. That is 5 out of 6 top spots.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go Quinn Hughes, and then you go Thatcher Demko. They're very top heavy.
Yeah.
So Jim Benning just didn't fix the D the way he thought he did.
I think it's the next guy who's going to be there is really just have a concerted effort to kind of solidify everything, if that makes sense. Like when I think about that core, excellent, great, complement it as best as you can. But at the same time, the guys who were not necessarily your top guys, but they were still pretty solid draft picks. I think it's going to go down to that. It's like, how consistent are you going to make the pipeline? That, Nils Höglander, Vasily Podkolzin, they're already there. But those are two guys that I think that they really have to be careful with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also thinking of their defense and Jet Wu, someone that they were able to, and this is what Jim Benning said, that, he was a steal in the second round. That's another piece that when I look at that defense is that when I want Quinn Hughes to succeed, I want these other guys coming in long term.
No, 100%. There's just, and there would be room, but there was always going to be that. Like if you ever want to trade like Tyler Myers, right, for example, to make room for maybe a young guy to eventually make the roster once he's ready, you can't scratch him because you take his value, for example. It's like, how do you move that contract? How do you move OEL? There's always going to be that sort of block there. And it was always, I think, Jim Benning's thing was to sort of have that stopgap for younger players to develop, is when he brought in the Beagles and Russells. And it just didn't work because he gave them the wrong term and he just cleaned it up the complete wrong way, right? Something else I just want to, in regards to all of this, the coach. I don't know anymore if Travis Green's a good coach. Obviously, there is someone we can ask that, and we plan on doing that. I just look at the Canucks and even the problems with their offense. For years, stuff like their rush chances and that have been awful with the personnel there. Yeah, Demko and Markstrom were great, and they had some decent, they had that run to the second round. They had, that good regular season. I've never been so confused about, is this coach good or not, than right now than I am with Travis Green. Because at the start of the year, if you would have said, man, Travis Green on the market, I'd say, yeah, man, let's do it. But now I'm like, I just don't know anymore. Because he could have done somewhat better, I feel like.
Sure,
you know what I mean? Like JT Miller saying, we don't know what to do at practice doesn't help. But we talked about, let's be careful about when we use the term losing the room. Pretty sure Travis Green lost the room.
Yeah.
He very much lost that room. And I don't know if it was directly his fault, though. I don't know if it was his fault that he lost the room, because what happened was, we walked into the season, and I think, including us, I think a lot of people had high expectations for Vancouver. Weak Pacific Division, they can make a divisional spot. They started the season not great. Pressure on Benning, pressure on Green, pressure on ownership. And once things started going downhill up top in management, where, all these rumors are leaking and the fan base is upset, that to me started leaking into the locker room too.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that happened, I think Travis Green lost the room, not because he did something in particular, but because the issues above him were now leaking down into the locker room, and how the hell is he supposed to clean this up?
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's like the erosion of the foundation there, where you continually try to build something on your on ice performance. But I really felt that when we look at management, it was never steady there. It was, sooner or later, you're going to figure it out that despite the talent that's there, you're gonna feel that, like, does management really have your back? Because I don't understand what they're doing.
Fair enough. Management in the future, though. It is a little backwards how the Canucks have sort of made the decision. We're going to get the coach first. First off, in insider trading, Darren Dreger did mention that Lawrence Gilman, I mentioned him, the guy who helped write the cap, now with Toronto. Apparently his stock is rising across the league.
It's the other way.
Sorry.
Pridham wrote the cap.
Pridham! I'm dumb.
Yeah.
Lawrence Gilman!
Lawrence Gilman
Anyway,
was with the Canucks
Pridham.
before. Yeah.
I knew that. I didn't.
Okay.
You know what I mean, though. Lawrence Gilman, anyway, an executive with Toronto, and Dreger talking about how his stock is on the rise across the league. Highlighted Vancouver and Chicago of possible places he could go. And then Pierre LeBrun sort of sneakily mentioned maybe Mike Gillis could go back. Because the Canucks are looking at more than just a GM. The possibility of a president has been sort of floated around there. I doubt that Gillis is going to end up being back there. That was just too much of a rocky road. But the real candidate that was reported here, and I can't believe this, is apparently Mark Bergevin. Now, apparently, Francesco Aquilini, when asked about Mark Bergevin and the job, he said, I think Mark just wants to take it easy for a little bit, and said he has not reached out to Bergevin. I feel like that's a lie. Couldn't you have just said, we'll see every option, but instead, I don't know if I think he wants to take a second. That kind of tells me that you talked to him and he said, I need some time.
Yeah, that is exactly what that means. Like, I don't know. How did you just make this up on the spot? We've had this discussion, but Mark Bergevin is an interesting pick here. I personally still don't see it as the fit that they think they need. I think they look
something funny.
Yeah.
The Canucks are 9-15-2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they want the guy who built the Habs. Okay, the team that's 9-15-2, right? Yeah. They want the guy who built the Habs, who are 6-18-3.
Cool.
Go on, Alex.
I don't necessarily think he's the he's the candidate they think he is. I think they look at how this is my perception. The Aquilinis seem to be very involved with hockey, and they'd admit that themselves, right? I think they did in their press conference. Mark Bergevin, not that Jeff Molson was I wouldn't say he's an active owner the same way the Aquilinis and Eugene Melnick is in the same way. But I think they look at how Mark Bergevin handled Jeff Molson in terms of they were friends, essentially. Like, I think it's fair to call them that, right, Adam? They're friends.
Yeah, they were like in the foxhole together. He loved Bergevin.
Right. So I feel like if they think that they can be friends with Mark Bergevin, that's their guy, right? Like, that's what they want. They want someone who can spew the same thing that they want to be said, and there's never going to be an issue like it kind of was in Montreal for 10 years. Or
That's why I have that
Virtanen was
fear.
such a great.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
No, just you
I
can
was
keep
just
going with the
gonna-
Virtanen thing. That
Virtanen was such a great idea, and that worked out so well. Let's go get the guy who drafted Logan May.
No, I'm just saying, but
Good job,
it
hockey. Good job.
it seems like that makes sense. That would be believable, right? That idea.
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
why, like, when I was watching the game, and I know that it was just one game, but it just let's curb the cheers for now
Bruce,
because
there it is.
we don't know where this is gonna go. Like, I think that at this point, the way they clean house, they have all the potential in the world to create something that's gonna be amazing here. But when you see reports that Mark Bergevin is being considered, or the the Aquilinis, and like you brought up a good point, Alex, where it's like they may want to bring in a guy that they're going to be very comfortable with, someone that on a friendship level it's going to be there. And I think that's why at this point I'm not going to get ahead of myself, and I want Canuck fans to not be ahead of themselves either, because we don't know how this is going to unfold.
Canucks fans getting ahead of themselves and getting no way.
I don't, you are going at every Canadian fan base today.
Yo, hot
What is
take.
going on?
I think they're going to make the playoffs.
The Vancouver Canucks.
I think they're going to go on a run.
Are you trying to jinx
Here's
it?
the thing. Bruce Boudreau instilled hope in me, and I don't like the Canucks. I don't know what that guy I just think he's really cool. He's funny. He's a funny dude. It's gonna work.
I think he's exactly what they need, though, right? Like he's dealt with highly offensive players, right? Like look at his time in Washington and who he was dealing with, Backstrom and Ovechkin, right? Prime example.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, I think one might be on their way to breaking Gretzky's record or something. But I think the way he has his players play and just his general attitude. I don't want to say he's a player friendly coach. Like I don't know if that's the term I would use, but I think switching from Travis Green, who was clearly, I don't think he enjoyed himself in Vancouver anymore, to going to a completely fresh face, someone like Bruce Boudreau, who's very positive and stuff like that. I think that will do wonders for the players, along with the fact that they're going towards a brand of hockey that I think really, really suits the young guys who are coming up.
Yeah. And guess what? You know what he has that he didn't have in like Minnesota, for example?
What's that?
A goaltender.
That is true.
Does not have the ghost of Devin Dubnyk. And who would have been the backup goalie there, Daniel?
Devin Dubnyk, and I don't even remember anymore. No, they traded him like pretty early on, like before he was the Darcy Kemper of 2 years ago.
Yeah. No, not today because he's bad. Injuries are a hell of a thing. But yeah, no, I think the Canucks are make it. Like they're gonna make it like second last day of the season because that's just how it works.
Even if they don't, I'm gonna say my prediction is that I don't think they're gonna make it, but they're gonna have like a solid season where, again, it's all about let's see how things unfold first. They're gonna have, okay, good enough. We could still keep working on this.